What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. Yes, I know, before you guys get in the comments, I know I'm wearing a rubber duck hoodie. We just did our 100,000 live stream, subscriber stream, and we're just having some fun on the stream. So before everybody rips me to shreds about my clothing choice, just relax a little. It was just some fun. I want to talk today a little bit about Pierre Poilievre and a little bit about the government returning to Parliament. I know it's been almost a year since we've seen any government functioning within the House of Commons. Now, when I say almost a year, when you think back to last year, I mean, the government essentially went on their summer break. They came back in September for all but like a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then were prorogued up until now. So essentially, it's been about a year since we've seen our functioning government in the House of Commons. And as Mark Carney chose his new cabinet, which, surprise, surprise, is just Trudeau's old cabinet. It wasn't really a new cabinet. It was just a shuffle. It was an overglorified shuffle. Pierre Poilievre weighed in on Alberta and Alberta separation, because now that Pierre is actually coming back to Alberta and running in a riding for a by-election to retain his seat as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, a lot of people have been questioning, well, what happens if Alberta were to separate and Pierre's in that riding? Well, again, just like moving him from Carleton, he would move somewhere else. But it's important that I want to highlight Pierre's answer to this, because after all, Pierre is Albertan. And while Mark Carney hasn't said anything about Alberta separation, of course, the Liberals' idea of this is just to put your head in the sand and forget that it exists, Pierre chimes in as an Albertan. Many people were curious what his thoughts, or any of the government's thoughts, are now that Alberta is pushing back, and I think he has a fair answer. But he's also facing a ton of controversy around his by-election. I'm going to get into that too in this video. Let's take a look here first off about the discussion on Alberta. Tweeting out here, Pierre Poilievre is asked if he denounces Alberta separatism. I love how this comes up first, because this is the picture that's going to be painted as Alberta moves forward. Is there a bunch of redneck separatists, they're extreme right-wingers, hillbillies, you name it. We're already starting to see that. What's really important to look at here now is essentially what are his thoughts? It says here that he says he's against separation, that he's a unifier, but lays out what he sees as legitimate grievances coming from Alberta. This is one of the things I warned about with Pierre running in Alberta now, is that essentially he's going to try to bridge the gap for a lot of people that are on the fence about separation in Alberta. He's going to try to unify the country that, hey, things can be better. The problem that I have when it comes to the discussion of Alberta separation is that this wasn't about who won the election. This isn't about the Liberals or the Conservatives. This is about Alberta saying, look, we're not getting a good deal anymore. We've never gotten a good deal. In fact, as Pierre states in this video, we're to shut up and keep paying. I don't believe that there's any deal that can come forward from a Conservative government or a Liberal government that could convince me as an Albertan to stay at this point. When you look at the positives that would come from separation, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to transfer payments, when it comes to prosperity, unless the government wants to put something reasonable on the table, I yet to understand, especially with Mark Carney being so silent, what the government could offer Alberta, at least from my point of view, to change my mind. Now, I'm not saying that I am voting on separation. I'm not saying that I prefer separation. I'm just saying that for myself, as somebody who's fed up with the government, how could you change my mind to not be fed up with the government? Let's take a look at what Pierre says, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more.
Are you willing to publicly denounce Alberta separatism and the Alberta separatist movement ahead of a possible referendum on Alberta independence next year?
Look, I'm against separation. I'm a born and raised Albertan. I love Canada. I think we need to unite this country. Albertans have a lot of legitimate grievances. I mean, let's be blunt. Canada's biggest industry, which happens to largely be situated in Alberta, has been under attack for the last decade. They've lost two major pipelines, a $20 billion mine. There's a new ridiculous energy cap that's going to drive jobs and production south to the United States of America. There's an industrial carbon tax that's going to kill the industry. And so, frankly, Albertans have a right to be frustrated. And I think the message to the government in Ottawa, the Liberal government, is you can't tell Alberta to just pay up and shut up. Albertans want to be part of a united Canada, but they deserve to be treated with respect, and they deserve to be honored for the immense contribution that they make to this country. And I will be a unifier who works to bring all Albertans to a place where they feel that they are respected and honored in our wonderful country.
So, again, Pierre trying to really douse the flames on separation. I want to be a unifier. Here's the problem that I have. When we talk about the government, Stephen Harper was from Alberta. Now, keep in mind that when Stephen Harper was in office, he could have easily shut down equalization. He could have lowered the threshold of equalization that Alberta sends across the country. Nothing was done. Stephen Harper, of course, reduced the GST from 7 to 5%. But Alberta as itself is not getting a good deal from the government. And as Pierre wants to unify, well, he doesn't have the power to change anything. So again, for those of that 34% of Alberta that are already prepared to sign on a ballot for separation, I really don't understand, again, with Carney even ignoring to not chime in on the subject, what could be offered to make those Albertans change their mind, or at least not even drive for more Albertans to jump on board. The astronomical deals that could come through via separation are much better than what the government can offer us. This goes back to Jordan Peterson's video just before the election, talking about Donald Trump and Danielle Smith, saying that the government doesn't just have to give Danielle a better deal, they have to give her a better deal than Donald Trump. Now, I'm not talking 51st state's going to happen, but what I'm saying is that the federal government really understands that Alberta holds a lot of cards. They just don't want to acknowledge it. Back to Pierre, though. You know, he's made this statement. He's running his by-election in Alberta. As much as he wants to be a unifier, he's facing criticism not just from Alberta, but also from the federal bureaucracy of the mainstream shill prostitutes. Rosemary Barton taking some time to look into herself. Table Salt tweets out that the CBC literally wants the leader of the opposition to not oppose the government, to fund and dismantle. This is, keep in mind the big bonus that Mark Carney just gave to the CBC. This is what we can look forward to over the next 4 years, or at least for as long as Mark Carney is in power. Paid shield prostitutes kissing the butt of their glorious leader. Look at the attack that comes on Pierre. And then I'm going to show some attacks that have come on social media now. I don't know how Pierre's going to make it into his by-election. I don't know how he's even going to be a unifier of Alberta with everything that's sitting against him. Let's take a listen.
And talking about how he would not be opposing the government reflexively, that he would do things in the best interest of the country and support the government in those issues, and that he says he wants the country to succeed. He then spent the next 15 minutes talking about all the ministers who were there previously and the things they did to ruin the country, naming particularly Sean Fraser and Stephen Guilbeault, taking some questions about how he will approach things inside the House of Commons, but overall, you know, it started out in one tone and finished in another. That's all I'll say, because he leaned into attacking the people that he thinks still represent, don't represent change, are still more of the Trudeau government, and particularly don't represent the things that he thinks Canadians want right now.
Yeah, cabinet is broken, is essentially what he said, right? It's no longer Canada's broken. He's saying this cabinet is not change. A style and approach from Mr. Poilievre, Rosie, that would suggest it's almost as if he won the election rather than lost the election and lost his own seat.
So this is the narrative that you're going to see from the CBC moving forward, at least into the summer, is, oh, Pierre lost his seat. He shouldn't be talking about anything. He lost his seat. In fact, this is what I wanted to allude to, which is being overswarmed on online media. You now have everyone calling for Pierre Poilievre to not even potentially run his by-election. Now, while the Conservative Party has said that they wish for him to remain as leader, Andrew Scheer has stepped in as interim leader until Pierre's by-election is finished. There was a discussion of what to do about Pierre's residence. Now, keep in mind, Pierre dismissed the severance package, or the package offered to him for losing his seat. He said he wasn't going to take it. I don't know too many politicians that do that. But now when we talk about his residence of Stornoway in Ottawa, a lot of people are mad, saying that he shouldn't be living there. Now, Andrew Scheer came out and said the Conservative Party says, what's the point in moving him out of there if he gets his by-election seat, wins the leadership, and then comes back in right away? Let's not be hasty. Essentially, what they've said is there's no point in moving him out of there if he's just going to move back in. It's not good for his family. It's not good for his children. It's chaotic. It's hectic. And I agree. What's the point if we're really talking about a couple of months? A lot of people online saying, could you imagine if this was Justin Trudeau and he refused to leave the government's residence and instead was allowed to sit there? If the party controlling that residence said, well, he's free to stay there and he was going to be running a by-election, I do believe there would be some animosity online. But when you look at the semantics of everything, and I'm not trying to say, look, I can be partisan here, but nonpartisan elsewhere. They want Pierre to remain leader. They want him to, they don't see the point. Could you imagine what it's going to cost to move him and his family out of that house just to move them back in versus just stay there until we get this by-election done? If he loses the by-election, he's not going to be living there. There's people saying evict Pierre and Anna Poilievre out of Stornoway residence in Ottawa, Canada. Sign the petition. There's tons of people online saying, oh, he's living on Canada people on the Canadian dime. He's living on taxpayers' dimes, even though he doesn't have a seat. He doesn't have a job. This is what you're going to see from social media outpouring. Again, with Andrew Scheer being the interim leader, saying we're fine with him staying there. I don't see what the issue is here. Things are going to heat up and they're going to get crazy. But Pierre coming to Alberta does waver a lot of questions. There's a lot of people, from my understanding, in the Crowfoot riding that aren't happy that Pierre is running for his seat over there. They don't want him to. They're mad that he dethroned an MP who was elected by their people to represent them. One of the common things I've heard from the residents is, again, I'm close to that riding in Spruce Grove, is that a lot of people are saying, look, when we had our other representative, he was working out of his office. Anytime we had to talk to him about problems, they'd listen. Pierre's going to win the seat and go back to Ottawa. We're not represented anymore. I agree. If that's what people want is representation, if they want to be heard, Pierre has already said in his videos he's going to have a lot to learn from. One of those, in my opinion, is being active with your constituents, with those who make you their MLA. You have to put boots on the ground in your riding and hear what those people have to say. But also, if you're in Ottawa, if you're at Stornoway, you don't have the ability to sit and listen to people's needs, people's demands, people's problems. So where does that leave their constituents? It leaves them in a position that there is discussion floating around. Pierre could possibly lose his by-election seat, which I think would be devastating to the Conservative Party. It would be devastating to the rest of Canada. Forget Alberta separation. It would be absolutely devastating to the country, as who's going to take his place? Andrew Scheer is going to take his place again. He's already lost an election. You talk about somebody who's lost and is sticking around. Andrew Scheer couldn't possibly run again. I like him, but I don't think he has the staying power or the ability to debate like Pierre in order to stick around. That's my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think Pierre's going to put a wrench in the works for Alberta separation? Do you think he's going to turn people to stick with Canada? Do you think that that's a positive or a negative? Do you think that Pierre runs risk of losing the by-election with all the shenanigans talking of another 200 plus names on a ballot or people who aren't happy that he's running in the riding? Let me know your honest opinions down below. We do have to discuss these things. They're important to the future of our country. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up as well. It helps push us out in the YouTube algorithm and get past those vicious censors that are in there to, muffle speech anytime you're talking about people they don't like. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Join our large Fringe majority here on the channel, and click your bell for all notifications. Joining me live here on the channel each and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, my weekly live streaming show where we go over everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know that's coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on this platform, full stop. I look forward to chatting with you guys in each one of those live streams alongside my beautiful wife, Mrs. Fringe, when we also look forward to hearing what you have to say this Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.